Hello and welcome to Foundations of Health, Part 1. My name is David Tenner of the Goldberg Clinic for Chronic Disease Reversal, and today we're going to talk about the basic principles of natural hygiene. Here's my email address, so feel free to email me with questions and comments, or visit our website at goldbergclinic.com for more information. Alright, so let's talk about health, and if you're anything like the guy in the picture there's a good chance you've become completely overwhelmed by the amount of health information that's available to you. As a health seeker, I'm sure you've read countless magazines, books, internet articles, the list goes on, and I'm sure you've quickly realized that this information often conflicts and that everyone seemingly has a different opinion on the subject. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of diet books out there, for example, and each one has you doing something completely different. If you're like the average person, you've tried all kinds of approaches to healing without any significant results. And where does that leave you? Well, probably confused, frustrated, and wanting to pull your hair out like the guy in that picture there. So, what we're in need of is a strong foundation. We need a framework, some basic principles to begin to make sense of the information around us, to think for ourselves, and ultimately be able to distinguish good information from bad information. We need a system to identify truth, complete with guiding principles that will ultimately allow us to achieve health freedom and independence. Now, this is where natural hygiene really steps in. Now, natural hygiene is a term that I'm sure the vast majority of you are unfamiliar with. So let's get a quick definition so that when I use that term throughout this presentation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So then what is natural hygiene? Now, this definition was created by one of the original hygienists, Dr. Herbert Shelton. You can see his picture there in the upper left-hand corner. And he defined hygiene as that branch of biology which designates the conditions upon which health depends and the means by which it may be sustained in all its virtue and purity while we have it, and the means upon which its restoration rests when we have lost it. It is the scientific application of the principles of nature in the preservation and restoration of health. Hygienic means health preserving. Practically, it implies the observance of the laws of life, and natural hygiene ultimately teaches that man is the builder of his own diseases and that disease does not come upon them without causes. Now, that was a mouthful, I know. So let's break it down piece by piece so we can truly understand what Dr. Shelton was talking about. So let's begin building our foundation by talking about the causes of health and the causes of disease. And in doing so, our discussion has to begin with a concept of energy. What I'd like you guys to do is to picture your body having its very own battery pack. And your battery is filled with what's called vital energy, which can also be called innate energy or life force. They all essentially mean the same thing. So let's take a look at this green battery we've got to the left on the screen. This battery represents your daily supply of vital energy. It's the source from which your body derives its power to complete all its daily activities, both conscious and unconscious. Conscious activities may include reading, running, studying, and gardening, for example, while unconscious activities may include digestion, heartbeat, breathing, and other cellular processes that you may not be aware of. Each and every process that your body undergoes requires a specific amount of this vital power, and it will drain your battery pack in a proportionate manner. But after a full night's sleep, your battery pack will be completely recharged as shown by the green battery to the left. Throughout the day, however, as energy is continuously being used up and drained, as shown by the red battery on the right, your body will then begin to signal you with a warning which we call fatigue. Now this happens as your battery starts to reach low power. And this fatigue is telling you that it is once again time to go to sleep and recharge. Now, a full night's sleep will provide you with full vitality for the next day, but sleeping only 50% of what is required will leave you with only 50% vitality for the next day. And here's a picture of a little girl who ran out of battery power or vital energy, probably after playing and running around, and she just decided to pass out right there in that cupboard there. But anyway, here's your take-home point. There must be a balance between energy expended and energy produced. In other words, if we expend more than we produce, we will quickly end up in energy debt, leaving the body short-handed and with no choice but to tap into its reserve storage supply. Now, the human body has tremendous energy reserve, given you by nature for emergency situations. And our reserves will keep us awake and functioning at a high level for days if necessary, especially if we're, confronted with survival situations. But routinely tapping into the savings tank will eventually lead to complete exhaustion. And when completely empty, that's theoretically when death would ensue. Now, there are two bodily departments, so to speak, that demand the highest quantity of this vital power. Remember, everything your body does requires energy, but the following departments require the most on a daily basis, so we're going to keep our conversation focused here. Now, these are the Department of Food Processing, most notably digestion, and the Department of Sanitation, or waste removal. The majority of our vitality supplies these two departments. Let's take a look at food processing, for example, to illustrate this point. Picture yourself at home with family on Thanksgiving, and food fills the table, and each person eats as if it were the last time they're going to for a month, right? Now, after each person is done stuffing his face with turkey, gravy, corn, potatoes, and stuffing, what then is the inevitable next step? And I'm sure you can guess, a good long nap, right? And why? Because it takes literally all the body's vital energy to begin processing and digesting all that food that we just forced down our throats. Now, this is what is commonly referred to as being in a food coma, or being drunk on food, when so much of the body's blood flow and vitality are needed in the intestinal tract that there's not much left over for anything else. All right, so let's get back to this concept of energy. Now, when the battery pack is low and we're in a state of energy debt, right, when we're expending more energy than when we're producing, we're in a state of what we like to call enervation, or energy debt, or exhaustion. Now, when we're in energy debt, the two departments that suffer the most are the two that require the most energy, right? The Department of Food Processing and the Departments of Sanitation. There simply isn't enough energy dollars, so to speak, to fund activities within these departments, and so their function begins to suffer. Now, as the Department of Sanitation lacks energy, the amount of waste, both exogenous, outside-in waste, and endogenous, intrinsic or metabolic waste, these begin to accumulate. Now let's take a look at the chart on the screen. And on the vertical scale, we have waste, or toxins, and on the horizontal, or x-axis, we have time. The horizontal line in the middle is a threshold point. If the amount of waste is kept below the threshold point, right, if the Department of Sanitation has plenty of energy and can process waste quickly, right, the body views this as a manageable situation. There isn't enough waste floating around to cause organic damage to the cells and tissues, and the body remains in a good state of function and a good state of health. But if the amount of waste exceeds the threshold point, we enter, yes, that's right, the danger zone. At this point, damage to cells and tissues is occurring, and the body is faced with a choice. Now, the body has two choices, right? It can either allow the level of waste to damage the system, ultimately ending in death, or it can take action to reduce the level of waste. Now, the body is a tremendously intelligent machine and will at all costs do what's necessary for survival. So choice one then is out of the question. So choice two is ultimately your body's number one choice there. Now, once the level of waste exceeds the threshold point, right, because we're in energy debt and the Department of Sanitation doesn't have enough energy to fund its functions, the body then creates what is called a crisis of toxemia, right? That was the body's decision to take action. A crisis of toxemia is a body-instituted action aimed at reducing the level of waste back down to a manageable level, back down below the threshold point. This crisis comes in the form of an acute illness, say a cold or the flu, for example. Now, the symptoms of a cold or flu, coughing, sneezing, diarrhea, vomiting, sweating, fever, skin lesions, all represent heightened efforts at elimination. Each of those symptoms is an avenue by which the body quickly gets rid of waste, whether it be through the mouth, the GI tract, the skin, or the lungs. Now, as you continue to cough up waste, break out an acne or a rash, experience diarrhea, vomiting, for example, there eventually comes a point at which the level of waste will drop back down below the threshold point into the manageable range. At this point, the body's work is complete, the danger has been averted, and the sickness or the crisis ends as quickly as if turning off a faucet. However, when we come down with an acute illness, it's all too common to visit, yes, I'm sure you guessed it, the doctor, and the doctor conveniently provides us with, yeah, I'm sure you guessed it again, drugs and other symptom-suppressing treatments. Now remember, the symptom represents vital action or body-instituted action to eliminate waste quickly in order to bring waste levels back down to manageable range. The illness is created by the body. If we suppress the symptoms with drugs and other treatments and the body cannot quickly eliminate the excess waste, then what happened to all that waste? And I'm sure you guessed it again, it gets trapped inside the body. You see, the crisis or illness is the body's cure. To treat the symptom is to try to eliminate the cure. And so essentially, your doctor is trying to cure the cure. Now this clearly makes little sense.